488. RP is calling from his business where he witnessed the subject putting merchandise in his pocket. The subject has left the business and is on foot, heading southbound. No weapons, no description. Engine 77, Rescue 78. Respond for an unknown medical. RP says that she sees a subject lying face down. We're advising PD.
On my way. On our way. On our way. Listening. On my way. Yeah? On my way.
Attention all units. We have reports of a man with a gun. Several RPs have indicated that they see a subject unknown
On my way.
description with a gun and he's firing shots at passing
Let's
vehicles.
go.
Units also be advised that we're getting reports of shots fired
way.
in that area. All units break and cover, fire, and rescue will stage. Be advised that we have Air 32 responding.
Yeah? On our way.
What's up? Let's go.
Yeah? Consider it done. On our way. What's up?
Engine 33, Engine 57, Engine 64, Squad 77, Battalion 46. Respond for an unknown fire. RP reported seeing flames and smoke in the area.
On my way. On our way. Listening. On my way.
Engine 33, 57, 64, Truck 78, Battalion 11. Respond for an underground pipe explosion. We got several calls, all indicating that they heard several loud explosions in the area where the construction work was being done. We have no reports of injuries at this time, but we're advising MCU to respond.
On my way. On my way. On my way. Understood. Yeah. Will do. On my way. Consider it done. What's up? What's up? On our way. On my way. Consider it done. What's up? On my way. On our way. On our way. On the way. Listening. On our way. On our way. What's up? On the way. On the way. Yeah? Listening. On the way. On the way. Yeah, immediately. Listening. Starting. Understood. On the way.
Oh.
Yeah. Understood. On the way. Understood. On the way. What's up? Listening. On the way. Will be done immediately. Yeah. Will do. On our way. Listening. On the way. What's up? Will be done immediately. On our way. Yeah. Consider it done. Listening. On the way. Yeah. Will do. On our way. Consider it done. What's up? On our way. What's up? On the way. Consider it done. On the way. On the way. Okay. On the way. On the way. Yeah? Yeah? On my way. Let's go. Listening. On the way. On the way. What's up? Yes. Yeah? I'm on it. On my way. What's up? On our way. Yeah? On the way. On the way. Consider it done. On our way. On the way. Understood. On the way. Listening. Got it. What's up? I'm on it. On the way. What's up? On my way. Immediately. Yeah, on the way. What's up? On the way. I'm on it. On my way. On the way. On the way. Understood. Listening. On our way. On the way. Immediately. What's up? On our way. On the way. On the way. On our way. What's up? Consider it done. On the way. What's up? On the way. No problem. Will do. Listening. On the way. Consider it done. What's up? Will be done immediately. On the way. Listening. On our way. What's up? Immediately. What's up? On our way. On our way. Done. Yeah. Will do. On the way. On our way. On our way. On the way. Immediately. Yeah. On our way. What's up? On our way. On our way. On the way. Listening. On the way. Listening. What's up? Understood. On our way. On the way. Understood. Will be done immediately. Will do. Listening. Will do. Listening. On our way. On the way. Listening. On our way. Consider it done. Yeah. On our way. Yeah. On our way. Consider it done. Yeah. Immediately. Listening. Will do. On our way. Yeah. On our way. Yeah. Understood. What's up? On the way. No problem. On our way. Listening. Yeah, on our way. What's on the way? On our way.
77, rescue 78. Respond for an unknown medical. RP says that she sees a subject lying face down. We're advising PD. Engine 33, Engine 39, Truck 66, Battalion 64. Respond for an unknown fire, possibly caused by a cigarette. RP says she sees smoke in the area.
On my way! On my way! Understood. Listening. On my way! Listening. On my way! Listening. On my way. Listening. On our way. Will be done immediately. On our way. What's up? On our way. On my way. Yeah. On my way. On our way. Immediately. What's up? On my way. Listening. On our way. Yeah, on my way. Will do. On the way. What's up? On our way. Yeah, will do. Listening. On our way. Will be done immediately. Listening. I'm on it. What's up? On my way. Yeah. On my way. Yeah. Will do. On my way. Yeah. Will do. On our way. What's up? Will do. What's up? On my way. Will be done immediately. On my way. What's up? On my way. What's up? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Listening. Yeah? Will do. Listening. Okay. On our way. What's up? Okay. Listening. On the way. On the way. What's up? I'm on it. On the way. Listening. Will do. On the way. Listening. Okay. On our way. On the way. Yeah. On the way. What's up? Yeah? On my way. Listening. Will do. On the way. Yeah. I'm on it. On our way. Listening. Will be done immediately. On the way. Yeah. On the way. On my way. What's up? On the way. Yeah? On our way. Yeah? On our way. What's on our way? Yeah, on the way. Yeah? On our way. Listening? On the way. Listening. On the way. Roger. Yeah? Okay. Listening. Okay, on the way. What's up? Okay. What's up? On the way. Listening. On the way. Roger. What's up? On the way. Okay. Listening. On the way. Yeah? Will be done immediately. What's up? On our way. Do. Yeah? Will do. Listening. On the way. Listening. On the way. Yeah, I'm on it. On the way. Yeah. Yeah. On the way. What's up? On the way. On the way. What's up? On our way. Will do. Listening. On our way. On the way. Listening. No problem. On the way. On the way. Okay. What's up? On the way. Okay. Listening. On the way. Okay. What's up? On the way. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Understood. What's up? Listening. On the way. On the way. Understood. What's up? On our way. On our way. On the way. Listening.
What's up? Let's go.
Yeah. On our way. On the way. Listening. On our way. On our way. What's up? On our way. On our way. Consider it done. Immediately. Listening. Understood. Yeah. No problem. On the way. Starting work. Listening. On our way. Listening. On the way. No problem. What's up? On the way.
Listening. Let's go.
Listening.
I'm on it.
On the way. Listening. On the way. What's up? On the way. Yeah, on my way. On the way. On our way. Yeah. On my way. On the way.
What's up? On my way. Got it. Listening. On my way. What's up? On our way. Yeah? On my way. What's up? On our way. Listening. Yeah? Consider it done. On my way. Yeah? On my way. Got it.
On our way. What's up? On our way.
Listening. Let's go. What's up? Got it. On my way.
On my way.
Listening.
On our way. On my way.
Yeah? On my way. Will be done immediately. What's up? On our way. Let's go.
Yeah? On our way. Yeah? On my way. Yeah? On my way.
Listen. On my way. Got it. On my way. Will be done immediately. Yeah? On my way. What's up?
On my way. Immediately. What's up? On my way.
Listening. It'll be done. On my way. I'm on it. What's up? On our way. On my way. Yeah?
On my way. Listening. On our way.
Listening.
Listening. On our way. On my way. On my way.
Listening. On our way.
Yeah? Immediately! What's up? What's up? On my way! On my way! On our way! Yeah? Will do. Listening. On my way. Yeah, I'm on it. What's up? On our way. Listening. Will do. Listening. Yes, sir. Listening. Confirming. Listening. On my way.
Listening. On my way. Yeah? Yeah? On my way. On my way. What's up? On my way. What's up? Will be done immediately. On our way. What's up? On my way.
What's up? What's up? Listening. On my way. Yeah? What's up? On our way. Listening. What's up? On my way. Yeah?